Welcome to another Explainer. Today we're tackling something absolutely monumental, the Chernobyl disaster. We are going to look closely at how a nuclear power plant explosion changed the world forever. Let's just jump right in and break down exactly what happened, the immediate fallout, and the heavy legacy that still actually affects us today. To really understand this, it all comes down to one specific date, April 26, 1986. Before this day, Pripyat was just this bustling, growing city, and its local nuclear plant was, well, just standard infrastructure. But on this particular spring day, a chain of events was set into motion that literally turned this site into ground zero for an unprecedented global emergency.
Section 1. The Reactor 4 Explosion.
So this entire catastrophe centered around one very specific spot, Reactor number 4. And honestly, perhaps the darkest irony of this whole history is that the explosion didn't happen during some massive storm, or a targeted attack, or some wild, unpredictable event. No, it happened during a routine safety test. The exact procedure that was designed to make the plant safer is what caused it to fail so spectacularly.
How did it actually go down? Well, the chain of events was incredibly swift, and it was fatal. It started simply enough with the initiation of that routine safety test. But as the procedure unfolded, human error entered the equation. Some really critical operator mistakes were made. And crucially, those mistakes interacted with inherent, fatal design flaws that were deeply embedded within the reactor itself. So you have this terrifying intersection of flawed human decisions and a fundamentally flawed machine. Ultimately, that combination triggered a massive explosion and a massive fire, blowing the reactor core completely open to the outside air.
Section 2. Radiation and forced evacuation. Things moved incredibly fast after the explosion in April of '86. The progression of the fallout was terrifyingly rapid. It took only days for this invisible, highly radioactive material to spread uncontrollably across Ukraine and deep into Europe. It completely ignored national borders, becoming a full-blown continental crisis almost overnight. And this invisible, spreading threat forced a desperate, scrambling response from the authorities, the permanent, mass evacuation of residents from the surrounding areas.
But beyond the science and the reactor flaws, there is a profound human cost here. Residents left their homes, many never returned. Tens of thousands of people were told to pack for what they thought would be just a few days, right? Only to find out later that their sudden evacuation was entirely permanent. Entire lifetimes, family homes, tight-knit communities, all of it was just left behind in the irradiated zone, never to be inhabited by those families again.
Section 3. Liquidators and Global Impact. Now, stopping this spiraling disaster from getting even worse took some unimaginable bravery. Enter the liquidators. These were the workers who literally threw themselves directly into harm's way. They exposed themselves to immense levels of radiation just to physically contain the accident. Without their immediate, completely selfless intervention to extinguish the fires and start entombing that exposed reactor, the spread of deadly radiation would have been unimaginably worse. The actions of those liquidators saved countless lives, for sure. But the sheer, massive scale of this disaster served as a huge, unavoidable wake-up call for the entire planet. Chernobyl fundamentally changed nuclear safety worldwide. It proved without a shadow of a doubt that a nuclear accident anywhere is a potential threat everywhere. This stark reality forced governments and nuclear engineers all across the globe to completely rewrite their safety protocols, update their reactor designs, and drastically rethink their emergency response strategies.
Section 4. The legacy of Chernobyl.
Look at the site today, over 3 decades later, and the contrast is just stark and honestly pretty eerie. Back in 1986, remember, this was a highly active nuclear plant surrounded by a densely populated, thriving area near Pripyat. Fast forward to today, and it is a vast exclusion zone. Nature has completely taken over the abandoned towns. And right at the center of it all, the ruins of Reactor 4 sit entombed beneath a giant protective structure. It's this massive engineering marvel built solely to keep the lingering radiation contained, and it stands as a silent, permanent monument to the disaster. So what did this catastrophe actually teach us? Well, first, transparency is strictly non-negotiable. A lack of open communication fatally worsened the initial response and delayed critical evacuations. Second, safety is absolutely paramount in nuclear engineering. It can literally never be compromised or rushed, especially not for the sake of a routine test. And finally, the world absolutely must learn from past technological disasters. If we're going to safely harness powerful energy sources, we have to respect the catastrophic risks involved and engineer accordingly to ensure history never repeats itself.
Which brings us to a really important point to ponder. Have we truly learned the vital lessons of transparency and safety that Chernobyl taught us? As we continue to navigate the complex future of global energy and push the boundaries of technology, this is the question we have to constantly ask ourselves. That giant protective structure in Ukraine is a permanent reminder of what happens when we fail. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions and keep learning.